I'll talk a little bit more about functional analysis today and what that process entails. Functional analysis is a procedure that's utilized to identify the function of a specific target behavior. Before starting this process, you want to get an operational definition of the target behavior so that anyone that may come into contact with the target behavior and collect data on it knows exactly what to look for and what this target behavior looks like. Also, you want to do a preference assessment so that you can already know which items are reinforcing to this specific client. The functional analysis is done through manipulating certain antecedents and consequences that can be found in the client's natural setting within a controlled environment, which would be the clinic in the case, so that the therapist can control the antecedents and consequences surrounding this observational setting. And this is done through test conditions and play conditions. What are test and play control conditions? Test conditions are how we work through each function of behavior, which would be attention, escape, tangible, or those self-stimulatory behaviors. So, of the 4 test conditions, first we have the contingent unknown condition, where the therapist, task materials, play materials, every environmental stimuli is absent, and the target behavior is either neutrally redirected or ignored. And if it's frequent within this condition, you can assume that it's maintained by the automatic reinforcement of those self-stimulatory behaviors. For the contingent escape condition, continuous demands are given, and as soon as the target behavior is shown, a small break is provided. And if the target behavior is frequent during this condition, it proves that it's maintained by the negative reinforcement of removing those demands or escaping the demands that are being placed. For the contingent tangible condition, preferred items are given for some time and then replaced with the non-preferred items or neutral items that the client just has really no care for. And if the target behavior is frequent during this condition, once the preferred item is removed, you can assume that it is maintained by positive reinforcement, so gaining back those preferred items. For the contingent attention condition, the attention of the therapist is withheld until target behavior occurs. If the target behavior is frequent, it can be assumed that the behavior is maintained by social positive reinforcement, so gaining the attention of someone else. On the other hand, for the play or control condition, no demands are placed whatsoever and reinforcement is constantly available. Throughout this condition, you can assume that the target behaviors will be low, and we're going to talk a little bit more about each of them going forward. So for this hypothetical situation, let's assume that you are implementing a functional analysis, and this is kind of what it would look like in a clinical setting. So for day 1, you present the contingent alone condition. So the child will be in a room completely alone with no environmental stimuli, so no therapist, no task, no toys, nothing of that nature, and they will be monitored through a one-way mirror or camera footage by the therapist to track the occurrence or non-occurrence of that target behavior. For the next day, you may present the contingent escape condition. This is where the therapist constantly presents tasks without stopping until the behavior is shown. Once the behavior is shown, then a break is provided. On day 3, let's assume that during the preference assessment, the child showed that they highly preferred dinosaur toys, but did not prefer to play with cars. So, let's say the therapist provides the child time to play with the dinosaur toys, which is the preferred toys with no interruptions, and then they would remove the dinosaur toys and replace them with cars in order to see if that target behavior is shown. For the next day, let's say you present the play control condition. So this is where the therapist will provide the constant attention to the child and give them unlimited access to all preferred items with no interruptions, no demands, just whatever they want to do, full attention of the therapist. Lastly, you present the contingent attention condition. This is where the therapist provides no attention to the client whatsoever until the behavior is shown. Then you could provide a simple redirecting statement like, let's be gentle, we can play with our toys, let's look at XYZ, just not really acknowledging the behavior, but providing that attention to the client. So, after going through all of these different conditions, throughout this time, the therapist would record the antecedents and consequences around each occurrence of the behavior. And then you can look at the frequency of each behavior during each of the conditions and see which one it was present under most frequently. If there is an obvious increase in the target behavior during particular test conditions, you can assume it correlates to the function of behavior and narrow down what the function of that target behavior is. But if the functional analysis is inconclusive, which means the behavior was nearly equal across all conditions, it could either point to the behavior being maintained by automatic reinforcement as well. So it's just self-stimulatory behaviors because they're not gaining anything, they're not escaping anything. It's just equal across all test conditions. However, you may want to redo the functional analysis if this is the case, just to be sure.